How's everyone feeling? Everyone feeling good? Yeah? All right, so welcome. This is Orbit Live's, I guess, less traditional take on what a panel talk normally looks like. Don't forget, this is an open forum. It's a safe space. We're here to share perspectives and experiences. I don't want you to feel like we are talking at you for the next hour, so do feel encouraged to share and also chip in where necessary. So yes, I am Karen Nyame KG. I'm going to be hosting today's forum. It's called Utilising Your Cultural Capital. I decided to actually join this panel because I am pretty much inspired by grassroots work for the past maybe decade or so. A lot of community-led platforms have helped me build skill, even from a representation identity standpoint. Community-led platforms have played an integral part in my career ascension and above and beyond. So yes, I'm excited to get this conversation going. So our lovely panelists, whoever wants to introduce themselves first. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Hello, my name is Thristian. I'm put down as founder of Global Roots, which I am on the thingy. But I'm also a founder of Boiler Room and Worldwide FM. You probably heard my voice on the radio or via YouTube or what have you. And it's amazing to be here. Thank you. I didn't realise there's going to be so many people. You never know when it's like a panel thing, whether it's going to be 5 people or whatever. So it's amazing to see so many people wanting to hear what we want to say, or going to say, or whatever we are going to say about building communities. There's definitely not a handbook for such a thing. And I don't know if I've got the answer, but let's see what we can work out.
Wicked. I'll go next. I'm David. I'm the founder of Eastern Margins. It's a platform and a community for music from the margins of East and Southeast Asia. So I've been really, really lucky to be able to go on this journey of taking something from a very, very grassroots, organic community into something more, into something that has grown limbs far beyond what I ever expected. So hopefully I'll be able to talk a little bit about that and hopefully learn a lot from everyone in this room about your journeys and what your interests are as well.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ade. I'm a member of the Black Obsidian Soundsystem Collective, which is a Black queer-led sound system. I am a DJ, writer, performer. I also freelance in other spheres and stuff. But I'm also excited to be here to make some notes and see what we can conjure together.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm excited to get this conversation going. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. And just to reinforce again, if there are any topics that do come up on the board that are striking and you can't wait to get your thoughts out, please do not hesitate to chip in. We'll pass you a microphone so you can share your thoughts and opinions. All right, so it's juicy. How? Let's go for building codified values. I think let's start from the foundation perspective in terms of building a community-led platform. Where do you even start? How do you devise and design codified values? Anyone can go first.
I don't mind taking that one. I think for us at Eastern Margins, maybe we came from a much, much more simpler position with it, which is we started with a specific purpose. We wanted specifically to highlight more East and Southeast Asian talent and artistry in the electronic music scene. So it's in the name, it's in all of the DNA of what we do. So when it comes to our values, I guess it's already there, kind of written for us. But I think what's been really important for us over the time is actually not being like super rigid with it, like evolving with our community, evolving with the people who are interested in what we're doing. And actually, like, we often say this phrase, but like embracing the chaos. Sometimes the messiness of change and evolution is a great way to spur discussion and like refine and better the values that you stand for. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Love that, Ade.
That was more than 2 cents. With B.O.S., it's interesting because we've been reverse engineering that process, because we evolved out of one project to build a sound system, and then from that point on there was now a collective and grouping coming out of it to utilize the sound system more regularly, provide it to the community, also provide it as a source of income to everyone in the collective. And so I think that meant that we were doing things together before we were able to have this conversation. And so we're now in a space where we're slowing down so that we can do that and make sure that we have a consensus, and working with cool people like Vanessa over here to help us in terms of having that language to figure out what do we want our foundations to be. But I do think as soon as you can do that in whatever you do, you should, because it is literally the root of the thing. It's the thing that, yeah, exactly. And when it's the thing that you're going to water as it changes, as it grows, as it transforms into something else, that thing will still always be at the root. And it's really, really helpful to have it there. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. I suppose. Yeah. Well, building collective, and also, you know, with Boiler Room and some of the work that I do, I kind of look at collectives and what they may be relevant to. And so I kind of look at the history of them, and also I suppose just, you know, when I was a youth, as it were, I was a big hip hop kid. You know, I was into Def Jam records and Tupac and all that, and that was all about having a family and collective. And you know, I'm a historian as well. I mean, rather as well as talking about myself, but you know, when it comes to underground initiatives or movements, it usually comes from a need or a space. So you know, you go back and I suppose Black Lives Matter is probably one of the most relevant ones that's come up recently. There was a need for people to express themselves in that way, to get across their message, for other people to understand where they're coming from, and that's where most good collectives or ideas kind of come from. Reflecting it to Boiler Room, I suppose there was no way to play that music. You know, radio wasn't doing it, clubs weren't doing it, and so you know, luckily enough, Blaze had a warehouse space, which was lucky, and some speakers. But you know, we literally put it on the internet. You know, I'm gonna make myself sound old, but you know, it's like the beginnings of video streaming, private video streaming, I suppose, and that just connected. You know, that connected with the internet generation that was happening at the time, with Twitter, all that kind of stuff. We were in Hackney. We are in Hackney. Loads of amazing music kind of coming out, moving around, people doing stuff, as there is now, you know, like people doing interesting stuff. And so we just kind of provided a platform for that. We didn't even realise we were doing it, really. It was essentially through boredom, and a lot of these things happen.
A lot of these things are established just through leisure, isn't it?
Yeah, you're just trying to do something.
Yeah.
And so if you find yourself like that, and you start finding yourself with people in common, then I suppose it's about finding what that common aim is. You know, through talking to each other. I mean, Boiler Room for me was, there's a few projects where I see it, but Boiler Room is probably the one that most people recognise. Because we were on the internet, because we had Twitter, it's one of the first, I don't know how many people here remember the Boiler Room chat room, when it was a bit wild back in the day. But, you know, we got like, that was community feedback. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like, it was one of the first times in a situation like that where somebody could say they love it or they hate it, to be honest. And then that kind of guides your sense. You know, when we started, we didn't even think that anyone was watching, which is probably one of the better shows until you realise the cats are watching. Then you're like, oh, let me just chill on this for a sec. And you know, these things define, you know, how they are. So if you are setting something up, you know, like it's good to have your your boundaries, or what you would do, what you want to do, what kind of format that it works in, but also like don't be too closed-minded, and allow feedback from anywhere. It doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who's qualified in that situation. It could just be an observer, and they're like, I don't like the blue on that screen, and it's like, oh, actually, it's fine. It's a good point. Actually, it's a bit
Don't like the lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could go for ages, but I mean that's the top part.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you made quite a profound point in terms of these things you can't really plan when certain initiatives or ideas take off. It's usually through like leisure and boredom, where you're onto something, you maybe notice like a gap in the market in some aspects. How do you feel, when did you feel that you found out what your cultural capital was? Was that an initial thought, or maybe later on down the line when you've tried and tested a few ideas and you're like, oh, this is it, we've got it?
I think that develops.
Yeah.
I think that develops. I think you understand your relevance as you go along. Yes. You understand who you're relevant to, who's hearing what you're saying and who's responding. Some people find the relevance in some of the stuff that I do. I would never have spoken to them before. Do you know what I'm saying? But then we connect on something else. Do you know what I mean? And I used to work in the Sounds of Universe Records a while ago again, but we were selling Bengo and Scream records and Mallet records, and we used to get cats coming in from like the city to come like straight like off hearing it on Rinse FM or Mary and Hobbs. Like, I'd be like waking up on the Tuesday and then my guy would be there, be like, yo, you got this dub player? Wow, I can allow it. Like, but it's like, he connected. Like, but I wouldn't usually, if I walk past him in the street, I'm like, whatever, man.
Wouldn't normally interact on that level, wasn't
exactly.
it? Yeah, bridging the gap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. David, how you feel about establishing or realizing when you had cultural capital?
Yeah, I think for us, we're still very much like on the journey. And I think what I've always really admired and look up to is collectives who are able to walk that line between both being very, very assured about what they represent and what they stand for, but at the same time being open to feedback, listening to those around them and adapting as well. And I think if you are too much in one direction, that can be detrimental to the progress of both your own brand and also the community. So walking that balance is really, really difficult, and it's something we think about all the time. And like flexibility is front of our mind when we think about what is our position in the cultural landscape. Yeah, being open to that. Ade, how about you?
I think you both said like really poignant things. One about realizing your cultural capital as you go along, and then also I really stand with that flexibility thing, especially because we operate as a group, and so that's 8 lives, and like in the magnitude of that, and like trying to align on something every so often, it's just, yes, it would be great if everybody's living an efficient, productive life that allows us to show up for every meeting on time and do all the things exactly how we should do them, but that's just not real life. And like, do you know what I mean? Things are happening. And so I think, allowing for that spaciousness of of people's lives and capacity, but I guess when you're in agreement that you can be held to account to things that you say you're going to do or not going to do, or to giving reasons or people a heads up when you can't do something, and those kinds of things. And I think, that applies to when you're starting to have conversations about what gigs you take or don't take, or who's in your inbox asking you to do a gig and how much they're offering for that gig. And that's interesting. So I think, paying attention, I think is a really good point, and the flexibility as well, I think, is two really major points.
I'm going to pull on something that you said in regards to sort of assessing the landscape, knowing what to take on, knowing what not to take on. And there's a nice, interesting point here about striving for collective or individual leadership, because ultimately your platform, all of the cogs are working in unison. But sometimes, as you said, you know, someone may not be a morning person. Like I said to you when we first met on the panel, and you may not be as aligned collective-wise. But yeah, how do you sort of navigate those potential issues if there's one goal, but then I guess you're not necessarily on the same page?
Yeah, I guess that also depends on what your group or organization does. As a sound system collective, I think we have quite a lot of options for lanes of things to do. So some people are DJs and performers, some people are artists, and some people do other stuff like the tech side. And so there's actually quite a few like things for people to do. If they don't want to do one thing, they can do something else or bring on another project that aligns more with that.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess that's an aspect of like flexibility in some instances
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But in terms of collective or individual leadership, I think there's a certain responsibility people have to have for their readiness to make decisions and whether they actually are present just to agree or disagree with someone else making a decision. I don't think either of those, I don't think that's necessarily actually a hierarchical thing. I think it's just more an honesty about the energy and like drive and passion you have for something versus like your capacity to do that thing. Some people are able to take up that role of leadership position and be in the inbox and responding to things and making decisions, and maybe you literally only have the time to check the WhatsApp and be like yes or no.
Yeah.
You might want to be involved in bigger decisions, but if you are not making that time in your life to give that energy, then I think you have to be honest about that so that things can move forward. And so, yeah, it depends on what is the consensus of your group in terms of those dynamics,
Yeah.
I would say.
Just testing the temperature, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. David?
And yeah, I was just going to say, like, pulling on what you're saying, I think there's definitely an element of like pragmatism to this as well. I think what you started the whole conversation off with about values is super important, because if you have a good idea of the direction your collective, your community is pulling in, that gives you the parameters, the remit of how you can drive things forward. Within that, you have to be a bit practical sometimes. People got stuff to do, you know? Like, sometimes things just have to get done.
Yeah.
Like, the first thing about grassroots organization, community, I think, is get it done. Just do it. And sometimes you might not have the ability or the medium or the forum to have the perfect discussion about something. So for me, what you said about having those values, still being flexible in them is super important.
Yeah.
But once you have that North Star, the way we organize is like very practical. If there's a project and it needs to get done, we organize it however we need to in order to get it done quickly and done it well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Before we move on, Tristan, any thoughts on leadership?
Yeah, I suppose the leadership, you just have to have a lot of patience with other people's kind of thoughts and processes, and like you say, you need to, if you have an idea or you have some kind of perimeters about what it is that you're trying to achieve, then usually, people's skills kind of gravitate, and once you're open-minded in the sense of like, I don't know, egos kind of getting in the way, or like you were saying, some people like the idea of leadership. It's a dangerous word, I think, leadership. I think that once you are working as a team, there is a team aspect to it, as with any team, you have a goal and you're all striving to achieve that goal. And sometimes you have to dig in and do what the other person, especially in like an independent situation. You're not at a corporate company where you've got job titles and assistants and what have you.
It's quite fluid when it comes to
it's kind of
community
like if
work.
you've got the time, if you've got the mind to be able to do it, then get involved. I think the holes appear when it is a bit like, well, that's your job, or fingers are started to get pointed. And if you feel like you are pulling extra weight, then that stuff does usually get rewarded in the end. Because if you're taking that phone call or doing that email, the other person doesn't know about what's going on there. Do you know what I mean? Like they can chat, but if you are, like you say, if you are trying to get it done, then you're just going to do it. And the people who haven't got that energy usually fade away.
I guess it differs. Like some organizations kind of work off that shared responsibility thing, and it works, and then someone has to kind of steer the ship in some other instances.
Because it's hard to kind of associate responsibility when, like, invariably there's not that much money, and so you have other responsibilities, whether that's family or work, and so it's hard. It's hard. It's like, a lot of the times I fear a lot of cats come out of the blocks in a kind of like slightly corporate mindset of like, right, this needs to be achieved by this date, this, that, and the other. But if you haven't got, and it's not about budget in order to like buy jewelry, it's about budget in order to have time. That's why you've got a job, and that you get paid by the hour. And so if you can replace that and afford your time to put on it, and that's just work. There's a balance, isn't there, between putting it in for nothing and then hopefully crunching it out till you get a project that pays you. I'm still doing the same hustle.
We're going to move on to more of that, actually, Thristian. And it's funny because initially, in the initial stages, you're pushing out, you're maybe you've acquired a few resources. Some monetary opportunities then start to appear as a result of you building your codified values. You've got a nice, I guess, a rhythm going in terms of your team, who's doing what basically within the platform. This section's called collaborating with brands, which I think is very interesting, considering, Thristian, what you were talking about, having an outward goal, but then in some instances it taking a bit of a long time to see that coin come through. So my question is, this is the juicy part. As a platform whose objectives are to serve the community, how, for example, a brand comes in, we like what you're doing, we've got an offer on hand in terms of like a partnership, so to speak. How do you know which sort of offers to take? Because in this instance as well, if it's something that is community-led, you don't want to lose your original vision. You want to retain that worth and value that you've established from the initial point. But how do you know what to say, what and who to say yes to? Especially if there's money involved. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
We say, how much and what do you want?
Simple. Get to the point.
Yeah,
how many zeros?
How many zeros?
How many zeros?
Have you got zeros? Anyway, and what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And you just figure out what you're comfortable with, really, I suppose. Some people, as everyone's got their own mind, haven't they? Some people agree with it, some people won't. Yeah. At the end of the day, you do need to figure out how to pay the bills some way. So you can't say no to everything. And we're not selling mixtapes out the back of Ford Escorts anymore. So, as everyone knows, I've worked with a whole heap of brands across the time. Some work out, some are absolute nightmare. Messes with you mentally, messes with your direction, all that kind of stuff. Some of them can really enable you to move further. Yeah. Not only with the money, but with also kind of what it says about you. And I think, especially if it, you know, we're talking about artistic projects or stuff that comes from the heart. It's whatever you're comfortable with. You know,
Yeah.
I suppose it's like collaborating with another artist. You know, it's like, do I like their shit? Like, if that's the thing, probably like, do you know what I mean?
It's like the first decision
if it's
point,
like the
isn't
trainers,
it?
you don't like the trainers. It's like, I'm not going to go on road with them trainers. So, like,
It's simple.
Are there any kind of like common threads that run through partnerships that you've worked on that you feel like, yeah, when this thing happens, it's good?
Yeah. It's like instinctively.
yeah, I mean, it's been quite a while since I've like worked directly with brands. You know, I hate it when they want to have their like logo everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, just relax on it. Like,
It's not about you.
let's get the message across. No, but do you know what I mean? It's like about getting the message across. And if you've got a brand that associates with the situation, that's gonna, then it you know, it infuses quite well. I mean, back in the day on Boiler Room, we used to have Red Stripe, and that was perfect. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you want a can of Red Stripe? And then they go and drink it on the camera, and that's it. And then there'd be Red Stripe everywhere. And the brand, then therefore the logo is everywhere. You know, it doesn't have to be on a t-shirt or stamped on the screen. I mean, things have changed. Obviously, Boiler Room is a completely different thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually, I mean, I'm different, and like I say, those things have moved on. But for me, it's like Blaze always used to take the piss. Whenever we go to brands, I'd be like, "Oh, can I get the free shirt?" Because I wanna test it. Do you know what I mean? I wanna use it if it's relevant to me, if it fits, if it works, whatever it is. Does it taste nice? You know, does it work? Because you know, I think for me anyway, it's nice to be able to work with things, and then that kind of like benefits your life as well. Because we're not talking about major P's. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're not. So can we work together?
Yeah.
That's me. You know. Everyone
It's
has
kind of
their-
outside of that, I guess, monetary value. You're looking at it as a whole. Like, okay, potentially, what could this do for
can that open the next
Yeah,
thing?
what door could this open?
Yeah, because we're trying to get some momentum.
Yeah.
And keep it going for as long as possible. So
Yeah.
can that get me on to the next step?
Yeah. David, any thoughts?
I think for us, we're definitely early on in the journey. You know, the brands that we've worked with, it's been quite a natural process. And I think with brands, sometimes you get the energy that you give out into the world. If your brand itself, if your brand itself communicates a certain energy, conveys itself a certain way, you're going to in turn attract certain brands to come to you. So if you're very specific in what you communicate, you're very defined in what aesthetic you communicate, you're not going to get random vape brands hitting you up. Like, you're not going to get the things that don't make sense coming to you, because they can see immediately. Like, brands also want something in return. So I think it's one of the advantages of having a brand that is quite defined, that the partners that reach out to you and talk to you are more likely to know what you stand for already. So the conversations maybe tend to be a bit easier.
If the brand is just strong off rip, then
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's easier to align that way. How about you, Ade, in terms of brand partnerships? How do you assess the interests?
I think, people are like, can we get free stuff?
Straight to the point.
Firstly.
Where's the free stuff?
But also, I think with us, it's a little bit different because we're also just DJs as well.
Yeah,
so sometimes
yeah.
people messaging us to DJ at something, or which might be separate to like bring in the sound systeming, or even different to like hiring the sound system for something. So sometimes it's really a personal decision within the group, because they're just asking for DJs, and so if you want to take that gig, if you don't want to take that gig, it doesn't, at least from my experience of the B.O.S. on the outside, it doesn't really feel like people's personal choices, even if they go as B.O.S., particularly looks like a whole B.O.S. decision, because of that individual within the collective thing. But in terms of larger organizations and brands, we definitely have like brand prices and things like that compared to the community prices that we offer for people. And I think some of the things we think about is just paying our minimum fees anyway, because we have minimum fees for DJs and minimum fees for this and tech and all that kind of thing. But then also, like you said, is there a way, can we push it to get money that will feed into something else that we're doing that's not this? Particularly if it's just like a performance or a DJ thing, then it's like, okay, what are our sort of longer term projects that this can contribute to? And I think that's where your things like your codified values come into play a little bit, because then you can see about the longer term, even though it seems like it's just one sort of random brand situation. That can actually become a longer term thing. And like David said, depending on the values that you're putting out there, you can push the button and see how long they want to commit for. Like lately, I've been feeling like if a brand says yes to something, then they're just always getting what they need from you. Like at the end of the day, it's a capitalist exchange, and so if they're willing to pay for it, then they're getting what they need. So just ask. Just ask for what you want, see what you can get, and unless and if you have some longer term brand things in your plans, then I guess maybe think about how you maneuver that. But I think if you're really just like, we know what we're doing, we know you're coming to us because you need something from us, then see what you can get.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that a couple of times. You reminded me of. We did Boiler Room Fives with Umbro quite a few years ago, and Umbro kind of came to us. It was a guy who used to come to the Boiler Room session. He was new in his job. He was kind of like, "You guys are cool. You got hits and what have you." And then we didn't manage to have like the pre-meeting before seeing his boss until we got onto the train to Manchester, and we were like, "Umbro, Boiler Room. How does that even work?" And like chatting on the train, then it was like, football tournament. 5-a-side. Oh yeah. We can invite all the record labels, and it turned into like the wickedest community thing. Because Cats, it's a 5-a-side football tournament. Everyone was there supporting their record labels or whatever. I got to be the referee. I tell you, I mean, it's open. It's there now. I mean, I'm too old for that now, so you guys can take it. I'll be the referee again. But in fact, somebody should. I'm not even joking, to be honest. If you want some help with it, give me a shout. But it was amazing. The first few that we did it on Hackney Downs, and you had the community out. We had barbecue, we had Soundsystem.
Such a good way to just integrate, both the platform and the brand.
And then that kind of led into the feedback, because the girls were like, "We want our tournament. Why how come we can't play?" Then it turned into, we had the girls and the boys, and then we eventually had the mix. So it taught us a lesson that we didn't. There's no way we would have thought that was where we would end up. And I think Romance FC, it was the Boiler Room ladies. Romance FC is now Trish is doing stuff with Adidas and gone off the chart. I mean, I haven't spoken to her in years. Like, it's become its own thing now. And so sometimes it might not be immediately obvious, and sometimes that kind of like clash between two different worlds really can open up different mindsets. Especially if you're connecting, the football thing kind of connected with a lot of people. That wouldn't usually, you're sitting there DJing. Then all of a sudden, it's like, man plays football. Like, man's a baller.
Guess it's that going back to staying open-minded. You kind of not being rigid, I guess, in who you sort of work with, but kind of exploring other avenues. Can open some more doors down the line. Great points. We have a question.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I was wondering, on this point, to what degree does it present like a moral dilemma at times? If it's like a brand where you don't really see yourself aligned with them, but maybe their intentions are good in that they want to, broaden what they're doing in like an authentic way by working with people that are like authentically working within different genres or communities. Or sometimes does it just seem like they're just trying to infiltrate, and is it easy to spot that? And is it also how difficult is it to say no in those instances and kind of say, you know, bearing in mind there is not always these bags of money that come along to then, you know, be discerning enough to say, this isn't for us actually, and just leave it on the table. Is that, like, how do you navigate that?
It's a good question. Anyone?
I think there's an element of gut, intuition that comes up in these spaces. Recently, I think even just in my own personal life, but if bringing it into the boss space, if we get an offer for anything and somebody's just like, I'm just like, leave it.
It's that gut instinct.
Yeah, I'm just
Never
like, leave
lies.
it. Like, if somebody wants to pursue it and they have the energy to then take the risk when someone's been a bit like, then fair enough. But I think if we're lucky enough to have like 8 intuitions of like, to think of 8 possible different versions of this thing, and then some things that might be a bit funny, it's okay. There's going to be more emails. If it's a moral dilemma, then that sounds like it's going against possibly whatever values you have for your group or organization or team. And then, yeah, then you have to like, what's your integritous position, I guess, at that point? If you're willing to, if that's somewhere that you're willing to be like flexible in, and what does that mean for your brand moving further on, and the people within your community who are looking to you for whatever you've said you're representing. And then again, like, are you getting the most out of it is another question to ask. If you do decide to move forward with it, are you getting everything you could get, particularly if you're having a funny feeling about it? It's just like, if I feel a bit icky, then you better get the max. Like, then be feeling icky and then getting the least as well.
That's where it's difficult to marry the two, is that, like, you know, you need to keep the lights on, you need to keep people paid. You don't always want to do things you want to do in work, but just not making it a misstep, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, that test of integrity is a tough one in the cost of living crisis. Go ahead, David.
I think whenever you're getting to that point where you're thinking this might be in opposition or contradiction of your morals, that's a relatively easy decision to make for almost anyone involved in grassroots community organising. You go with your morals. But I think there is definitely a lot of like grey zone stuff where you start out, you know, you meet someone, one person, they're really good. Maybe they get replaced by someone else in the marketing team. Now you're talking to someone you've never met before, and then the whole dynamic completely changes. And I think something that we do, and we do it quite systematically, it's kind of riffing off the idea what Thristian, you were saying, like, ask about the zeros. Be upfront, like, be right at the beginning, be like, what is the scope? What are you expecting me to do? What are we getting paid? What are the deliverables? And I think if you have a lot of those discussions up front, it flushes out like the gut reactions, the intuitions into actionable things where it's like, it's actually no longer the grey zone. Because you start arguing about things like, well, I don't feel it's right that your branding is going to be at our event. And then they're like, no, it is important for us. Then you're like, cool, let's walk away. So I think for us, locking down the scope, being really specific about it, can kind of help you decide where in that, to take it out of the grey zone, basically.
Thristian, any thoughts on the test of integrity?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if it's challenging your moral integrity, then I mean, it's probably easier for you not to do it. It's likely to be a bag of stress, to be honest. You know, if they are very unlikely to respect your work ethic, to respect you, to respect your work. And then that's probably, you know, when you do start challenging the integrity of your work versus the dollar signs and how far you are ready to push that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's easy to say walk away. But I mean, looking at the people around the room, I think a lot of you understand where it is that you're coming from. You know, I mean, it would have to be pretty hardcore to be morally It'd have to be pretty hardcore, man. Yeah, that'd be like, yo, no. Whoa, I ain't doing that, man. I ain't doing that. And sometimes you do find yourselves, involved in projects. I've been involved in some where, yeah, maybe I've been a bit like, this isn't where I would usually tread, but they have hollered at me. Let me check it out. And I suppose that's where the initial meetings and initial contact, and how you feel about that. And it's the same as, would you do business with somebody that you don't trust? I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it? You are doing business with them, even if it is a creative endeavor. And so, yeah, if you don't feel right about anything, I would say that in life, and that's easy to say. Walk away as quickly as you possibly can.
Great. So it's the last topic for this morning's conversation. Some great points there. I think what's sticking out at the moment, we're talking about opportunities that present themselves as your platforms evolve. How do you sort of determine whether you can do this long term? Because at this point right now, you're getting the brands, you're getting the wheels are in motion. How do you look at sort of long term sustainability for the platform and the art? Like, at what point does that become a conversation?
For me, it's kind of got to the point where it's like, can I actually do anything else with the time that I've got? Can I go to work and still fulfill what I'm trying to do? Do I want to do this job, or do I want to do this thing? And how am I going to enable that to happen? I still wake up each day and sit here and think, how long is this thing going to last? What do I need to do next? And especially, when COVID hit and lockdown, all that kind of stuff, you start thinking about what else can I do? And it's not much. So if anything, so I'm gonna have to keep doing this thing.
Just hang on in there, hey.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Man's here. Do you know what I mean? Like, man's here. Holler at me. Yeah, I think there is that point. I think there is quite definitely that point where you're like, okay, you have to take the jump. You have to take the jump, and there will be points where you start having to hustle with your landlord or your gas bill or whatever, and move a few things around, and look into the pit. As somehow, a parachute pops out. If and like I say, there is no handbook. It is just about belief, blind belief, and taking that jump, and hoping that the landing is soft-ish, or at least you can land.
Yeah.
But it's hard to define when that is, and you will quite definitely have to take a hit. It took me probably a decade to see any kind of money that I can live from month to month on. Each day waking up thinking, right, what's the next project? How can I crunch that? Do I pay my rent with that, or do I put the internet project? Do I move with that? It took a long while. It definitely wasn't. There are big checks that arrived as well, but they had to be moved in other places and what have you. Everyone looks at you and go, wow, you're wicked. Like, your life's wicked. No.
It's a dream.
We're just trying to get some ice and water over here. Get me? You feel it in yourself. Even if maybe your parents or whatever are telling you that you need to go get another job or whatever, this, that, and the other, and you're still fighting them when you're on BBC and thing. But hey.
Yeah, I relate to that so much as well. I always have this conversation with creative friends that have multiple day jobs, and then they've got that one passion that's sustained by their multiple day jobs. And then like, Kay, like, when do you jump type thing? It's just like, yeah, Tristan, as you were saying, if there's a tug of war between your corporate job and your passion, and, effectively that parachute does open up, and you believe that you can sustain, then yeah, I think that would initially be time. David, Ade, any thoughts on that?
I do lots of things. I will say, sometimes the parachute might not open, but you're not going to die. You'll be okay.
Might break some bones.
You might need some recovery time
here and there,
Because it's true, it is a jump. I also work as a barber, and I work in Access as well as an audio describer, and for a production company. But almost everything I do is to do with sound in some way, except the barbering. That's just a fun job. So everything is in the same world. I think, I don't know, man. It's just one life. If you're unhappy, if your corporate job is not doing enough for you, and that it supplements your other thing, and you're not at peace within yourself, I think you just have to jump,
Plunge and hope for the best.
Because what else are you doing in life? Like, I don't know. Like, you should be enjoying yourself and doing something you like, right? And we live in a version of the world where I think, yes, you actually do have to like work hard to achieve what you want to achieve, but the possibilities are actually so. We have so many examples of the possibilities. You don't have to make a million, whatever, to like sustain yourself and look after yourself and feed yourself and pay your rent. There's a level of consistency you can get to with certain numbers that actually you can live off your stuff. But it does take hard work, and giving up. Time is the currency that becomes the most important thing. And if you're doing your corporate job, or not even your corporate job, just something that is just passing the time and you're not enjoying, and then you're coming home from that tired as well, like, really, it doesn't show up if you don't give it the time. So I think success is when it sucks but it still feels worth it. Like, I know I've been looking at my bank account lately, like, damn. But
oh my
like,
God.
I enjoy everything I do. Like, everything I do really makes me like really happy. And being a part of Black Obsidian Soundsystem is so cool, because we're still creating what we're creating, but it's something that it's hopefully going to keep economically feeding back into itself and giving people in like my communities the opportunity to make money. Like, recently we've been hosting free open decks at our studio, and people come in and they're just like, oh, there's no other space where I'd be able to like practice on this level quality of equipment and hear my sound through this level of speakers. And those little things, being able to be part of a group that can provide that, because I do other things that allow me to like supplement and give up my time like that, it feels totally worth it. So yeah, money is definitely nice, but
Just seeking fulfillment.
Yeah, that's nice too.
That's nice as well. David?
It's a big question, right? Like, when do you jump? Should you jump?
Yeah.
And I think actually that parachute thing you were saying is like perfect. Actually, a lot of the time, like, it's not that deep. Like, go for it. You're allowed to make mistakes. Do you really know what success is if you don't fail? So in that process, it's totally fine to make a decision that maybe 3-6 months later, you're like, that wasn't actually the right call. But you'll never know if you didn't go for it. So I actually think there's a lot to be said around like avoiding inertia. If you feel like you're stuck in this deliberation and it's causing you actually to not move in either direction, I think that's the worst outcome. Moving in the wrong direction is not a bad thing, because you'll know it's wrong and you can correct it. So for me, that decision of what does success look like, sometimes you just got to jump without that parachute, and then you're going to find out which bones you're going to break and which ones you can live without, basically.
Which ones you can live without? Thanks, David. Any questions? I saw a few hands go up. Do we have a microphone? Oh, great. Go ahead.
It's on, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm partially I partially can't hear, so yeah. Anyway, vibes. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and it relates to the success in the beginning of this conversation. You just mentioned that you created the collectives. Also, sorry if I'm speaking too fast, so I'm going to start slowing down. Okay, so at the beginning you mentioned that there was like gaps in the market, and you wanted to create spaces for your community to like share and access your own cultural capital. And I wonder how and if belonging is something that you use to define success, either belonging for yourselves as individuals, but also belonging as a collective. Because we talked a lot about like economic success. Yeah, we live in a capitalist society, but I'm interested also in that aspect as well. Thank you.
Great question.
Yeah, I think that's about when you start realizing your cultural relevance. That comes at you. I mean, that's what I live and breathe off, really, is not necessarily feeling relevant, but feeling that I'm connected, or that there is a school of thought, an army of people out there that, you know, have similar standards to me, especially when we live in a world of Donald Trumps and Boris Johnsons and what have you. And so, you know, the collective movement, the space in which we can express ourselves and share our experiences is more rewarding than, I mean, you know, I'm not a great money person. You know, it's, I mean, what do you do with money? You know, where does it get you? You know, do you take those dollar bills with you after you're finished? You know, what, not necessarily what difference can you make, but what can you help enable in the future and once you've passed? How can it be better? You know, I'm a descendant of slaves, you know, 4 generations back? My ancestors were in shackles. And now I'm enabled to be able to spread my culture and what I think. And, you know, my kids and my grandkids will hopefully be able to continue living in a much freer and respectful society to what I live in. And that's what powers me. We are in a capitalistic society. You know, you need to pay your bills. You know, my kids and grandkids won't be able to go to school if I don't have money. But that's not what's going to be left on this planet afterwards, if we do have a planet to leave behind.
That part. David.
Yeah, belonging. It's a real intangible thing, right?
Yeah.
And there's something that's so important to what everyone does, because a lot of people, when they start out, you're not making any money. You start out because you want to belong. But how do you kind of retain the essence of that as you grow? I think it's for us, for Eastern Margins, it's about having lots of conversations and lots of difficult conversations as well. Like being very open to have chats with each other to say, like, is what we're doing, do you still get that sense of belonging? Or are you feeling like things are getting a little bit too, you know, like rigid, a little bit too systematic? And having relationships with people where someone can be like, actually, you know what, like, I don't feel great about this, or I'm not liking this. And being able to say back, like, okay, how can we change that? I think that way is like your anchor to that sense of belonging.
I think with B.O.S.S, yeah, definitely. Most of us just work in sound or music or audio in some way, and work rarely wherever in spaces with other like black queer people. And so there's a lot of that satisfaction that comes from doing that together. And also definitely a lot of validation. It's a very diasporic group, and even just like, I think B.O.S. gigs are sick. Like, because the music that everyone plays is just so dope, and it's in a similar world, but it's still so individual, and it just, I don't know. For me, it just makes me feel very, very fine swimming in this third space, and like, yeah, I definitely get that. Absolutely get that sense from being in this crew.
I guess like if passion leads, everything else really is a bonus. So yeah, I definitely, that resonates as well. We do have time for more questions, so where's the mic? Oh, hi.
Hi. So yeah, thanks very much for sharing all your experiences and giving us some insight into how it's worked for you guys. I've done my best to try and remember this question right from the beginning of the talk. Basically, it was like, I think it was David who mentioned something about like chaos, which is quite relevant to my life. And it was like, I just wanted to ask basically how you guys found the ability to like unify chaos, I guess, in the way you work and live and manage things.
Yeah, I think chaos is really interesting for me because I've had lots and lots of professional experiences outside of the creative world as well. And I think in those environments, chaos is like eliminated. You try and always like systemize everything. You try and get rid of it. And actually, a lot of the beauty of the creative world and of the chaos is like, that's where you get your best ideas. And that's where you evolve. So I think what we try and do at Eastern Margins is like, you can't just have pure chaos, right? Like you can't just like everything all the time, all like, yeah. That is jumping out without a parachute. But if you're able to kind of harness that, you're able to have like a forum with which people can feel like, okay, I can just put out ideas, I can be a bit chaotic, and then be like, okay, how do we execute on that? How do we actually get those ideas done? I think that's like the sweet spot. And that's like what we're always trying to find. And we definitely don't get that every day. But when you do get it, when you do get that feeling of being like, okay, something that was born out of messiness, but we put enough order onto it to actually do it, that's perfect.
Yeah. Magic in the madness. We've got a question here.
Hello. Thank you for all of those contributions. My question is pertaining to like, so I'm like an artist and cultural producer working primarily in like trans and QT BIPOC spaces. And in what I've done, I generally don't have trouble getting the partnerships, like they do come in, but it's more that pertaining to like tokenism, a lot of the time, someone will sell an idea, really be in my corner, be very like, give me a very nice like concept, and then I will show up to the thing with my thing, and I'll realize that it's like, say the crowd is like majority white people, or like, people that are not in my community, but I've already committed to it. So then like, goes without saying that I wouldn't want to work with them in the future, but I guess my question is to more like how to say yes to these collaborations where we're also creating the conditions that like make us feel safe as like marginalized producers, but also like which are gonna like embrace the community, and you're not like inviting in like DJs, producers, and artists into a space that is like inherently like not gonna be fun for them or not gonna be a good gig for them. And I know you can't you can't be a mind reader, you can't like future-proof everything like David was saying, but like I do think like there's a body of knowledge here. We've all had these experiences, like let's talk about it, like how do we like say yes to the right things and not put our artists and communities in these positions where they don't feel great, where it's not going to be like an embracing audience, Sorry, it's a like long question, but yeah, I'm sure you relate.
I went to a talk by the person who runs Gay Times, and he said something really interesting because they're gigantic, right? But they actually just still have the same problem where there's just essentially brands virtue signaling, and what is your your sort of contractual choice around engaging with that? He said, which I thought was interesting, that they're actually trying to basically work out with their lawyers ways to put that into their contract as well, where there's some sort of like moralistic obligation that's been legally assigned to, so that like if they say all this stuff at the beginning and then halfway through it gets all a bit like all fuzzy, not quite what we said at the beginning, then actually they have every right to step out of that space. Now obviously they're bigger, but I don't necessarily think that a more individual version of that couldn't exist, that could hold brands to some level of account that they would respect more than a sort of person-to-person thing. That's not to say that I know that works or anything, but it's that thing of when you show up on the day, right, and it's like way too late. And so, yeah, that would be one thing that comes to mind for a way to maybe try and start maneuvering. Because I think you have to get clever with it.
Well, I come from the art world, and we have like contracts, you know, like generally when we have an agreement, or consignment stuff like loans, and there's like stuff like that I'm like aware of in my life. It's like I'm so new to it, and I don't know like whether or not you can protect yourself from like showing up to an event where you're feeling heavily tokenized, or like if you're just feeling unsafe or whatever.
Yeah, I think you can put that into a contract, a moral contract in a way. You know, I think it's hard because, you know, sometimes you feel tokenized and in danger. And if you ever feel in that sense, then obviously get away from it as quick as possible. I think if it's a missight on both sides, it's usually on the responsibility to carry out your performance or what it is within your contract. But I mean, especially since Me Too and Black Lives Matter, there have been quite a few people stipulating in their contract kind of like the balance of the crowd, or you know,
even just the lineups as well.
The lineups as well. I mean, that's like it should be a standard thing by now. But like, you know, you can stipulate, and then that does give you the right to be able to pull out last minute and still get paid a proportion of the money. Because I suppose that's essentially what we're looking at, really, is making sure that you come out of it with, you know, your reputation isn't tarnished beyond something you can control. You know, because sometimes if you're going to walk away from something, there will be questions. You know, why? And if you can answer that question and you can point to specific points that you've made in relation to that, then that helps your case. But you will come across these things. You know, I've been to gigs in country. You know, I've flown for 8 hours or whatever, turned up and I'm in this gig, and I've had to turn off the music and just wait until they sort it out. You know. But then, you know, I'm a 6 foot plus black guy. You know, there's like, certain things that can work. But at the same time, I have been in dangerous situations. That's not me saying no, I'm not vulnerable. I definitely am. You know, and I think everyone here has different vulnerabilities, and so, you know, with experience, you start. We were talking about something, and I kind of like dropped the point, but. You know, as you're starting out, I would say try and say yes to as much as you possibly can, because what that hopefully will do is give you an experience of what it is that you don't like. So, you know, you're not going to know that from the beginning. And so you're taking in all of this information, and then, you know, when you get that phone call or you get that email, like you'll get that, oh, no, I'm not into that. I don't like their vibe. And you'll feel totally justified. Like, there's nothing anyone can say that will get you to do that gig. You'll be like, I'm just not on it. Like, allow me.
We've actually come to the ending of the forum. I can see your hand up, sir. The conversation is that juicy. I was saying to Ade, like, 15 minutes is not enough for me, okay? Please, let's give a round of applause for all of our panelists. There's still time to chat. We're going to debrief. We have about 10 minutes before the next talk, so please feel free to interact with us. Just quickly, where can everyone find you on the socials? Ade.
At Black Obsidian Soundsystem.
Mike's off with the
They locked us
timer.
off. Oh. Just find us on Instagram. Oh, wow.